Thank you for downloading this RealAgriculture podcast. Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more at excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca.
I'm Lyndsey Smith with RealAgriculture and RealAg Radio, and joining me now is Christine McCracken. She's the Senior Animal Protein Analyst with Rabobank. Christine, welcome here.
Yeah, great to be back with you.
Yes, okay. It's been a couple months since we chatted, and in the meantime, Rabobank has been busy putting together a couple reports. The latest is a quarterly report looking at the hog market. Some good news here, some less good news. Maybe we'll start with the challenges. What do we have in front of us in the hog market right now?
Well, there's always a lot of instability as you head into the fall, thinking about, maybe some higher production numbers that conceptually can put pressure on the markets. But overall, things are actually really good. When you think about, lower feed costs and some really healthy herds, which is maybe putting a few more pigs on the market, but generally is resulting in some pretty good profits for producers this time of year.
Okay, so that is good news, but that's not to say that there aren't maybe some challenges, maybe locally, maybe globally. So let's start maybe with some of the main things that, are weighing on the hog market globally.
Well, when you think about, the uncertainty, the global uncertainty, when you think about geopolitics or elections, there's obviously a lot going on there, and that raises some real issues relative to trade. Trade's such a big part of the Canadian pork industry and the outlook. So anything that could disrupt trade between North America, or when you look globally, can be a real challenge for the pork industry. But right now, things are fairly steady. It's just a question of what happens next, right? And obviously, there's a lot going on in those markets.
Mm-hmm. So we've got U.S. election, of course. We have the Russia-Ukraine war. We have the Middle East is a giant mess. What am I missing? Where else do we have global conflict potentially that's impacting the hog market?
Yeah, when you look into 2025 and the renewal of the trade deal between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., that's obviously on the table, and that raises some real issues and concerns relative to free trade between the three countries. When you look at near term, what's happening in Japan and some of the slowdown that we're seeing there, that's obviously at the top of our minds, although things look pretty steady as it relates to pork exports. When you think about some of the disruption relative to, the currency, obviously around the world, those are the real big drivers for trade as you head into the coming year. So that's what we're watching.
Now, production costs, as you mentioned, sort of off the top, perhaps a bit more favorable right now or through the season. Perhaps we will see that continue. How has weather played into sort of what the outlook may look like as far as the producer? And then I want to talk about sows, but let's talk about sort of the weather element working its way into this market too.
Yeah, I think, when I think about global markets, I'm focused on Brazil right now. And really, the crop was a little slow going in, and that raises some concerns about the second corn crop and that, could have some impact on corn prices globally. That's kind of what we're watching. But generally, you think through, some of the drought issues that have impacted wheat availability, and that obviously raises some concerns more locally, but generally I'd say that, net feed costs are lower, and that's obviously a positive as we think through profitability for the sector. So, I think there's always a degree of variability in feed costs in production, but with global stocks, kind of rebuilt, we're actually more favorable on the feed cost aspect of production into 2025.
Now, so this brings us to, of course, we need a healthy sow herd to, of course, produce all those piglets that become that delicious bacon and ham that we love. Where is the U.S. anyway at, particularly in the spectrum of growth, consolidation, steady? Where are we at with the sow herd?
We've reduced sow numbers about 8% from the peak in 2019, and really it looks like we've stabilized and we're starting to think about expansion. The challenge is always, do we need more hogs? When we have such good productivity, herd health's been good. Obviously, we're getting more pigs per sow, so obviously that's putting a lot more pigs on the market, and that has to be balanced with the number of sows that we need. It's probable that going forward we don't need the same size sow herd that we've had historically, and much like we've seen in Canada, obviously, we've been bringing those numbers down. So it is kind of stabilizing now in both the U.S. and Canada, but when you think about the outlook for next year, how quickly we rebuild is still kind of a jump ball.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned health, of course, really important within our hog sector. There have been a few challenges there with a few diseases that have really been a challenge for producers. Did hear last week of avian influenza being found in some backyard hogs. This is not commercially anything like that, but what are you hearing from that perspective of, whether it's African swine fever or avian flu? From the disease perspective, how worried is the hog industry when it comes to the health of these hogs and these latest threats?
Well, it's always at the top of the list, right? And when we think about the concerns and the potential risks to production, obviously there's a lot of disease that could impact the industry and be really disruptive. So, it's really, the producers have really stepped up their biosecurity efforts and have really worked through some scenario planning to, in the event there is some kind of disease break that is trade limiting, that they can clean that up fairly quickly. But as of right now, avian influenza is contained, within a small backyard production operation, far from any commercial pork operations. But that obviously raises new concerns. PRRS is always an issue, PED. But ASF has, at least at this point, not been a real issue in North America. So it's something that we're always watching for. But good news is, for now, no immediate threat from ASF.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And looking forward, get out the crystal ball. Things, of course, in decent shape for sure, which is maybe, better news than maybe we've talked about before. Beyond the animal health impacts, what will you be watching in the next quarter, as far as the hog markets go?
Well, I think that when we turn the corner in 2025, it's really all about demand. Demand's been really good. That's great news. It's been not only strong in North America, but globally. So when we think through, really what's going to happen in 2025, will we continue to see, economic growth? Will the consumer remain fairly resilient? Obviously, pork does better in retail channels than food service. So as a whole, looking to see if consumers are struggling, if they continue to turn to retail, and if that really helps benefit the pork industry. And then looking at competing protein supplies. So thinking about, the tighter beef supplies that maybe we talked about earlier, or chicken, how fast chicken is going to grow. Obviously in Canada, supply managed, but here in the US, that is obviously an industry that continues to grow. So there are a few kind of big nuts, as we like to call them, that we continue to follow for 2025. But as of right now, I think as a whole, they're fairly trending in the right direction, I guess, for the pork industry.
All right, Christine, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Good thing. Great to be with you.